But you can tell we got a lot of empty apartments because they're all got plywood on them. And I know that's to keep people from breaking in, but it's kind of sad. And I just think you need to know these things. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other individuals signed up to speak.
With that, we'll move to item number 3, presentation regarding the 2023 financial and compliance audit update. Diana Fiedler, CFO.
Good afternoon. We have some special guests with us today. Our independent auditors are going to be providing an update on our financial and compliance audit for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. Cohn Resnick is our primary independent auditor. They're based in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023 represents the 4th year of their 5-year contract. And each year they team up with a local firm, Garza Gonzalez and Associates. They've, just a bit of trivia, they've actually served as our primary auditor back in the early 2000s. So they have a lot of institutional knowledge with us. And the 2023 audit commenced with on-site fieldwork performed by Garza Gonzalez staff, and will culminate this month with the issuance of our primary audit report, as well as our electronic submission to HUD of our financial data schedule. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce Eric Rumberger. He's an audit partner with Cohn Resnick. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Aaron. Good afternoon, everyone. As Aaron said, my name is Eric Rumberger, audit partner with Cohn Resnick, based out of our Charlotte office, and I have with me Chelsea Glass, who is our manager on the engagement, and Jason from Garza is with us as well. So we are here to talk about the June 30th, 2023 audited financial statements. And our brief agenda will cover some high-level audit comments, then discuss our audit plan and the results of our testing, go over some required communication with you, and then finish with everyone's favorite topic, new accounting updates. So as a quasi-governmental agency in receipt of significant federal funds, you're actually subject to 3 different sets of auditing standards, which results in 3 different reports. The first is auditing standards generally accepted in the United States of America, generally accepted government auditing standards, known as GAGAS or the Yellow Book. When it was originally published, it was in a nice yellow cover, so that's where they came up with the clever name Yellow Book. Auditing standards required by the Uniform Guidance, and everyone wants to hear this. Right now, all 3 reports are showing as unmodified or clean opinions with no control deficiencies or non-compliance reported. So in a little more detail in each of those reports, the first independent auditor's report under generally accepted auditing standards, that covers the audit of the financial statements, the footnotes, and all of the disclosures themselves. So our opinion is showing as an unmodified or clean opinion, which is our highest level of assurance, saying that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. I do like to point out that in our audit opinion, we do reference other auditors that audit the pension plan. So the amounts that are included in our audit, we are relying on that separate plan audit for the amounts reported in the financial statements. And also that plan is not audited under the government auditing standards or Yellow Book standards. There's both unaudited and audited information contained along with the financial statements besides the financial statements themselves and the footnotes. So our opinion does clearly point that out, what information is what. So then our second report is our Yellow Book report, which is on our consideration of internal controls over financial reporting and compliance, which could have a material effect on the financial statements. So that is covering what are the controls of the agency, and so that the amounts reported in the financial statements are materially correct, which will contrast with the Uniform Guidance report in a second. We do reference that other auditor of the pension plan as well, and that it was not audited under the Yellow Book standards. So if there were any issues related to the pension plan that would have been found from Yellow Book, the reader is aware it wasn't audited for Yellow Book purposes, the plan. We do not provide an opinion on the effectiveness of internal controls or an opinion on compliance. Rather, we report anything that we find. So if we find any deficiencies in internal control or non-compliance matters that would impact the financial statements, we would report those. So as I mentioned, there were no deficiency or other matters to be reported. our third report is the report under the uniform guidance, and this is our audit of compliance for major federal programs and internal control over compliance for the major federal programs. So that internal control aspect are what are the controls of the agency to ensure you are following compliance requirements of those programs. It may or may not impact financial statement numbers, but slightly different from the previous report on the internal controls. We do have some leeway in the guidance when selecting major programs, so we don't audit every single federal dollar. This year, we had one major federal program, which is the MTW program. And we do provide an opinion on compliance, saying it's an unmodified opinion that the agency complied in all material respects with the compliance requirements of the MTW program. Similar to the Yellow Book report, we don't provide an opinion on the controls. Rather, we report any deficiencies, and we're happy to report there were none reported this year. And overall, high-level comments, management and staff, extremely cooperative, well-prepared. As always, it's a pleasure working with Aaron and Diana and everyone on their team. We perform no services for the agency, which would impair our independence, which is very important for those opinions. And we recognize all the amazing, great things you do in your community and the residents you serve. So providing our services to you is a pleasure and an honor. We do really take pride in the work that you do and that work that we do for you as well. So a little into the detail of our actual audit plan and procedures. So we always start out with interviews with personnel to update any controls, documentations, and systems, performing walkthroughs on all those significant areas. And then we move into fraud discussions. So we hold fraud discussions with key management and operational personnel as well as board members, and happy to report that there were no instances of fraud or other significant areas of concern that were brought to our attention to focus in on. So then on the balance sheet, some of the high-level items that we look at, some of the bigger items that are important: cash and investments, receivables, payables, debt. We do test all those reconciliations to underlying support, as well as confirmations with outside third parties when appropriate. We spend a lot of time detail testing capital assets, including depreciation, testing significant additions, disposals, and any gain or loss. And then we review and test all program revenues and operating and non-operating expenses to ensure everything is properly captured in the right period and classified. We do issue separate audit reports for several of the component units, and I have listed all of those out there, and each of those were all unmodified opinions on those separate audits as well. We do audit the financial data submission schedule, which Aaron referenced to. That's the format that HUD requires you to transmit your financial information to them. And then we audit the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and we use that as our basis for determining what the major program was, again, the MTW program. So required communication. Under our standards, there's certain information that we are required to report to those charged with governance, which is you, the board. And the next couple slides highlight some of those items which are contained in our formal communication letter that we'll be sending out. First is our responsibilities under our standards to make sure that you understand what our professional standards say. So we are to express an opinion on the financial statements, and that we plan and perform that audit to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance. We do test on a sample basis. We look at specific transactions, but not reperforming every single transaction in the financial statements. So that's why we say we have reasonable assurance, but not absolute assurance that the financial statements are fairly presented. And the consideration of internal controls, as we have already talked about. Management is responsible for the selection and use of appropriate accounting policies, which are presented in the financial statements. There were no transactions entered into during the year for which there's a lack of authoritative guidance or consensus. So we would call this accounting gray areas. If you had a new type of transaction entered into and there was a selection from different ways to account or report for that, we would make you aware that there was an intentional choice made there. We had no disagreements or difficulties with management, and there were also no consultations with any other accountants regarding auditing or accounting matters. It's not terribly uncommon in the industry for management to go out and get a second opinion if there's a contentious issue. And if that were to happen, we would report that to you, but no such consultations happened. And then we also highlight significant estimates, which are an important part of the financial statements. And for you all, that is the allowance for doubtful accounts, collectability of receivables, and the useful lives of capital assets and the depreciation of those items. We're required to report to you if there were any audit adjustments identified as a result of our procedures. And this year, there were no posted audit adjustments that were identified by us. So the new accounting updates, we only have 2 items to talk about. The first was a new standard implemented this year, which was subscription-based information technology arrangements, or SABITAs. Very similar to the GASB 87 for leases standard that was implemented last year. So for those long-term software arrangements that you have, you're required to capitalize that asset for the expected future payments over the life of that contract. So then you have a liability showing here's our expected outflows over time for those contracts. And then you recognize expense over the life of those contracts. And in the notes to the financial statements, there's a new footnote, note 5, which discusses those items. And only one new accounting standard not yet implemented that's coming down the road. We did discuss this last year. There's some others that are out there but wouldn't have any real impact on you, but that's compensated absences. So that's really just trying to streamline and make sure that when you have different types of compensated absences, if you don't know when or if they'll happen, jury duty leave, military leave, family leave, all those kind of things, when do you recognize a liability and have to disclose those in the financial statements? So that won't be until fiscal 2025. And our last slide, I have my contact information and Chelsea's contact information as well, so that anyone can reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. And if you have any questions or comments or things we can address for you now, we'd be more than happy to do that.
Commissioners, y'all have any questions? Just out of curiosity, educate me. This is the audit for our current fiscal year, the 23-24, or is this an update on?
This is 2023.
Okay, so it was last year's.
Yes, because you have 9 months to finalize it with HUD, which is this week.
Have we seen that audit yet, or you're giving me an update and we'll see the audit once we finalize it before we go to HUD? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be finalized this week.
Okay. Anything? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Okay, we've got minutes. Approval of the March 6th, 2024 regular board meeting minutes, approval of the March 20th, 2024 Operations and Real Estate Committee meeting minutes.
I move for approval.
We have a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Minutes pass. We have consent item 5 and 6. Actually, I'll take a motion for consent item number 5. Unless there's any questions with regards to this.
Item 6 has to be discussed in closed session, right?
Correct, that's
Yep.
why I'm just doing it for item 5.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second for the consent item 5. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent item number 5. We will table number 6 until after our closed session. Let's see. We'll go to President's report, discussion item number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's a report that you should have in front of you. I'll just highlight a few items. We have Commissioner Gilbert Casillas, who has received Category 8 Commissioner of the Year Award at the Texas NAR Awards. I think that'll be issued tomorrow. Congratulations. We had a resource fair that we participated in on March 23rd. We're currently celebrating Women's History Month by decorating department doors, so I invite you to walk around the offices and take a look at the decorations that have been set up by the different departments. Our policy and planning group held 2 MTW plan sessions, receiving public input and discussing the proposed policy changes. The MTW conversation is continuing, and there was some discussion at the Ops Committee, and I believe the next meeting will be having a further update. Commissioner Dalia Flores Contreras was recently featured on People on the Move with the San Antonio Business Journal. Congratulations. Haven for Hope's Community Resource Fair was on March 8th, and we participated. I believe the board chair was able to attend that as well, so thank you for attending that. And then our JEDI work group, which is Justice, Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion, had a retreat on March 4th to talk about some of the activities we've had so far and some of the planned activities in the future. We're continuing our lease-up fair activities with landlords, and that was held on February 28th. I think all of the board already knows about our executive leadership update. Brandy Pettis now serves as our real estate and development officer. Congratulations, Brandy. We had a Connect the Grid press conference at Via Trancasi that was held by Congressman Kassar, and he was announcing the Connect the Grid bill, which would require ERCOT to connect with the neighbors, and this would ensure reliability of electricity over hot and cold months. We had a donation of carnations and candy from District 10 Councilman Mark White, so thank you for that. And let's see, I'll skip down to the SA to DC. The board chair and vice chair participated in the annual trip. It was February 5th to 7th, so thank you for your participation. And that concludes the president report for today.
Okay, with regards to the MTW plan, I know, so we'll get that full presentation again with everybody present.
Right.
You know, one thing that we will key in on too as where our 5 priorities are being encompassed within that plan for both future and how we're approaching them today. I didn't know if any other commissioner had any comment with regards to that, but I know that's something that we'll be looking at. Specifically, there was a question earlier as we move forward on the collection policy. You know, we had touched on that as part of one of the priorities. I want to make sure that staff presents a better analysis with regards to what those categories are in terms of the number of households who are delinquent, and just that plan for addressing those delinquencies. We want to make sure that we're prioritizing connecting those individuals because we recognize there may be a situation where they need necessary services that we don't provide that maybe we can connect them with outside of what's within our wheelhouse. And we just don't have the capacity to. So in keeping in terms with our compassion, we want to make sure that we're keeping that also in the forefront. Sorry, Commissioner.
Just to add to that, and I think we've discussed this before at this body, although I don't precisely recall the date, but the city of San Antonio has made changes to their EHAP program and the eligibility for EHAP, partly in recognition that the old program structure might have been fueling some instability in rent collection and increasing delinquencies for affordable housing providers. So I'm sure that we are coordinating with the city on that new process, but just to make sure that we're aware of how they've changed the eligibility for EHAP and the new portal that they're using through the homelessness hotline.
Yes, we have been in contact with the city, and we plan to work with all of our partners as we move forward and and actually go through a planning process with neighborhood services at the city.
Okay, and recognizing that we don't need to prolong it either. It's incumbent upon us to protect, this organization too first, so that way we can service our residents. I want to make sure that we're not pushing too far down the line because we want to do a process or an evaluation. That's stuff that we can probably do pretty quickly. Any other comments, questions? Before we go into closed session, I noticed the Saturday Night Fever coming up. That's there it is. I just want to make sure the commissioners, I know some staff are not available, they'll be traveling, but something to consider to attend. So with that, Counselor, would you like to take us to close?
Yes, sir. The board will be convening in closed session under sections 551.071 to consult with its attorney regarding the semi-annual litigation update. The board will also be discussing real estate and consulting with its attorney under sections 551.072 and 551.071 of the Texas Government Code to receive an update regarding Horizon Point development and regarding the contribution of funds related to the sale of Artisan at Salado Falls and the payoff of debt. Finally, the board will be discussing personnel and consulting with its attorney under section 551.074 and section 551.071 to discuss and consult with the attorney regarding the president and CEO's performance goals and appraisal for 2024 and 2025. The time is now 1:30.
Closed session.
Hello and welcome back to Opportunity Home San Antonio's regular board meeting. The time is 4:05 p.m. Attendance stands. You may return to the meeting.
Thank you. We have one item on the consent agenda that we need to pass. So I'll accept a motion on item number 6.
I'll submit a motion to approve consent item number 6 as discussed in closed session.
Perfect.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We have 2 corporations to do those. Let's go into those real quick, and then we have some final comments. Do we need to call roll?
Why don't we, since you've been out? Will you call the roll?
Welcome to the Las Vegas Public Facility Corporation. I will now take roll. Chair Gabriel Lopez.
Here?
Vice Chair Gilbert Casillas.
Here.
Dalia Contreras.
Here.
Estrellita Garcia Diaz.
Here.
Janet Garcia.
Here.
Leila Powell.
Here.
Vincent Robinson.
Here.
Doug Ponnick, Board of Commissioners Attorney.
I'm present.
And Secretary Treasurer, President and CEO Ed Hinojosa Jr.
Here.
The Board of Directors or its committee may hold a closed meeting pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071-076 for consultation concerning attorney-client matters, real estate litigation, personnel, and security matters. The board or committee reserves a right to enter into closed meeting at any time during the course of this meeting. Are there any citizens to be heard with Las Vegas?
There are no citizens signed up to speak.
Okay, we have minutes of March 6th, Las Vegas Public Facility Corporation meeting minutes to approve.
So move to approve.
We have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes passed. We have one consent item. Item consent and approval regarding Resolution 24 LVPFC-03-21, authorizing contribution of funds related to the sale of Artisan at Salado Falls and to pay off debt and other matters in connection therewith. Miranda Castro, Director of Asset Management, but since we've already discussed this, I'll accept a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second on item 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That consent item passes, and we will adjourn Las Vegas Public Facility Corporation. We don't need to do roll call, so we'll open the San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation meeting and call that to order. Are there any citizens to be heard for this one?
There are no citizens signed up to speak.
Okay. We have minutes for March 6, 2024, San Antonio Housing Facility Corporation meeting minutes. Take a motion.
I move to approve.
Need a second?
Second.
First and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Minutes approved. We have one consent item, consideration and approval regarding Resolution 24 FAC .03.20, authorizing the sale of vacant lot located at 731 Runels Avenue. The expenditure of unrestricted funds, including but not limited to a portion of the proceeds of the sale and all other actions necessary to effect such sale and other matters in connection therewith. Miranda, since we've already had the presentation on this one, I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Need a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We will adjourn that meeting, the Housing Facility Corporation meeting. Yeah, now we'll go back into the regular board meeting. Okay. With regards to this one, it's important to us since we were reported out, and as we were discussing sort of the financials and that the discussion we had earlier in this meeting, as well as performance goals, we identified that this board wants to have an update on the 5 priorities every meeting moving forward. That update we need staff to present sort of better analysis on the numbers of households and delinquencies. We've all sort of had this conversation. The development and partnership with regards to the policy, we want it followed. Our expectation, our hope is that any opportunity that comes to this organization, if it meets the parameters of the board-approved policy from December 2020, then this board should see it. This board wants to see those opportunities. Those help this organization. It puts us in a situation to further help our residents. That's important. And then there was the second policy with regards to infrastructure.
So with regard to infrastructure, we want to get updates on any initiatives or programs that are in place to improve the residents' security as well as maintenance of units. In addition to customer service, we did have, I'm thinking back to the presentation we have with regard to our Ring Central upgrades and updates. Haven't heard anything about that since, and there is a number that stands out with me with regard to that presentation, so I would love to hear more about that. So on that particular topic, if we could get more updates again that are relevant to the priorities that we have outlined for you guys, that would be very helpful.
On outstanding balances, that was another item that was important to us. I think Commissioner Cortez?
Yeah, I feel like last time, I can't even remember when we talked about rent arrears. It was a while back. We had some really strong disaggregated data about the rent arrears. I was looking at the presentation, Ed, thank you for sharing it, that was shared at the board meeting. I was not here on the 20th. But on slides, it's slides 28 and 30, which have Beacon and public housing. The request is to be able to go a little bit deeper on the data, especially for folks who have not paid. On the Beacon side, being able to see of the 4,200, of the folks who are not paying, how many of them, I see it on the public housing side, I don't see it on the Beacon side, how many of them are in active repayment agreements? That row is missing on that information. So just wanting to know I know that this is 90 plus days, right? Last time we looked at it, there was a chart that was like, this is 30 days, this is 60 days, this is 90 days. And then 90 days wasn't just lumped in 90 days, it was broken out. So it was like 90 and a couple of others. I don't see the whole data set, so I can't make recommendations on slices, but we should look at those and have some dollar amounts to know. If there's any other critical information on that, such as maybe broken down by income levels or broken down by some other relevant information that is helping you all make decisions about triage and support, that would be good for us, and we'd look to you all for your recommendation on what other layers to embed. So having those amounts and the dollar amounts, and then on the public housing side, just recognizing the fact that we have less than a third of the number of households on an active repayment plan, knowing more about the ones that aren't, right? Like how do you have them bucketed, or do you know more about them? These are pretty significant amounts. And I believe that, on one hand, like I'm really thankful that we have provided so much support to families. This does not feel sustainable. And I don't believe we have the financial ability to keep floating this forever. So we need to be looking at that as a board and figure out at what point are we going to start having the conversation about how to move to the next level of action with families, and what does it look like for us to have this early conversation for awareness building with external partners who would also be impacted by whatever action we'll end up needing to take financially. And I know you had a specific request there.
Yeah, I did, and I want to also underline that I was not at the meeting last Wednesday, so I may not have all the details, but But I want to underline for staff that this is not, the board does not see this as an operational discussion. The board sees this as a very high-level policy discussion about what our philosophy is regarding the tenancy in these units. And we know we have 100,000 people on a waiting list. Is our philosophy that someone who's occupying a unit should continue to occupy that unit whether or not they're paying rent, and whether or not that means that our operations as an agency are unsustainable? Because I think that is a policy issue. It's not an operational issue. It gets to the heart of who we're serving and how we're going to be able to continue to serve those families. And so we want you to do what you're really good at, and we want to think about what the parameters are for how that work happens, not to be directing what a notice should look like or when a notice should be given. We hear a lot of pressure about the wait list and how the wait list is huge. How are you going to serve the wait list? We ought to have a discussion as a board about serving the wait list. And is anything that we're doing preventing us from making units available for people who have the opportunity, who don't have the opportunity now to access those units?
Also, in that request, was sent to Ed month and a half ago, I believe, in an email, and he can share that with you all. But the breakdown is Beacon Public Housing by property, by unit. I know you don't tell us the names of the unit number or whatever, but Unit 1, Unit 2, Unit 3, how much they're in arrears and the amount that is in arrears, how many months and the amount, and that's what we're looking for. We've discussed this, and we as a board are looking for this. So I know that we talked about it in the last meeting, and last meeting we said that we wish to have that breakdown. We didn't see it come this meeting, so we hope to see it at the next meeting.
Is there an established policy for collection?
There is a policy well, I won't call it a policy. There's procedures that we use for managing through that, both on the Beacon side, and I know there's procedures that I've been reviewing with Joelle on the public housing side as well.
Okay.
And so we can provide that.
Okay.
I didn't mention this when we
Sure.
but I did, in reviewing the presentation, did we, if I don't see it in here, so I'm assuming we didn't talk about it, so it would be a request for a layer deeper on the satisfaction survey information. The satisfaction survey data, which really starts on slide 34 and goes through, this is our satisfaction survey data, it's via survey data, and it's looking at safety and quality as two big indicators. That's what we looked at, right? I want to make sure.
Yes, I think Richard can clarify this, but we just extracted a piece that to show the different levels of the strategic plan and how far the
Okay.
planning goes down.
Was this current survey data from a latest survey we had just done? It was? Okay. And the reason I'm asking is because it's very global and high level, and I know that we're going into the season of budgeting, strategic planning, and a lot of things are going to come out the next couple of months where we're going to be looking at what are you all prioritizing, how are we aligning budgets, and so it feels very timely. From this survey data, I don't know that as a board member I can look at what was presented and just have an understanding of where do we have hot spots versus where are we really doing really well, right? So in terms of survey satisfaction, are there certain properties or communities or parts of town where the survey data is a lot lower and we may want to have a more targeted approach to response? Similarly, on the safety and quality side, are there areas that you are looking at where residents actually still don't feel safe or the safety numbers are lower? And then how are we going to respond as an organization in the next strategic cycle? And similarly on quality, RED is our own internal assessment on the quality of our portfolios, property portfolio, and then how do we then plan to prioritize funds and capital improvement or whatnot? And so that was basically my feedback on the data. Percentages are great. As an educator, we try to be very careful with percentages because they hide inequities. And so I would just love to see some of that data disaggregated by property type or even property or part of town or zip code, whatever lens you're using to have an equity perspective to understand who is most vulnerable and how are we prioritizing to serve our biggest need from a safety perspective and from a quality perspective.
So, these 5 priorities are important to us. It's something that we've identified collectively. We've had input. So that's why we want to be reported out each meeting moving forward. This, with regards on our outstanding balances, it's not, we hope that you can also show us the plan. Beacon had a plan. Let's see that also in public housing. There has to be a plan for addressing, like I said before, the delinquencies in a way that prioritizes connecting some of these individuals to the services that we may not have the capacity to provide. So, we want to be able to assist our residents where necessary. And in some situations, now we have an opportunity to address those on our wait list. And that's also important. We're gauging families that need our assistance, that are not in our units that could be. Let's start that. I know y'all had presented a plan that said that would start later. We asked for sooner. Let's see that move forward.
Mr. Chair, one question. I've been taking notes, and I know staff has as well. Do you want this at every board meeting or every ops meeting or every?
Anytime this board's meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, every ops meeting, and just an update. It doesn't have to be well, actually, it needs to be to be able to answer the questions that we've asked.
Yeah.
So, those 5 priorities: development, maintenance / infrastructure and safety, the outstanding balances, the wait list segmentation, and the communication policy, because it's not lost on us that as we start moving to next steps, communication policy will be important for this organization and the board, so that way our voice is in unison. Because we understand the importance of what this organization understands, the importance of what it's doing. So.
Okay, got it.
And also, Ed, I have a little concern, and I don't know if, but if you could look back at the resident from Cross Creek about the issue with police not responding to the property, and find out if maybe Domingo can look into that, but find out if there truly is an issue with police not responding because it's private property or whatever. Because
Melissa Garza, our director, was in the room during that conversation, so I'll be following up with her.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff. I think that's it. We'll take a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Have a second?
Second.
A first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.